Hello once again, everyone. So since I know someone will probably ask, especially after seeing the last video that I just put up, can we do any more German style, so KDF style thrusts against the Pendelziele? And the answer is yes, you can. Here are the ones I recommend if you are more of a German. So first and foremost, you've got all of your Meisterhauer on the table. I'll go through how to do those each individually, but let's start with some general skills first. Probably the most important one is going to be your basic Zornhau, and you can again do this kind of like the Italians do, but what I'm looking to get here is I'm looking to push out at the same time as my step. Just get that tip nice and extended. I was a little close on that one. There it is, right? I want that tip arriving as my right arm arrives, and then I can wind up, return, and I'm safe. Really, once you get that basic Oberhau, you got pretty good. These will cover a little bit greater range since you're going to be passing into it. But just get them nice and snappy. You can also do the Unterhau from this, which is again a very useful skill. What I recommend you do with this guy is with the Zorn / the Ober, I'm stepping in relatively straight line. For the Unter, I always want to be getting a little bit of offline movement. Nice extension, drive that tip through, return, I'm going to try again. Up through, back to guard, wherever you see fit. Then, following that, we have our two Absätzen. I like to do from Flug and then from Ochs. So, Flug, the relatively easy one, right? I'm down here, my tip is nicely extended. Push it out, step through. You can return into either Ochs or go into Flug again. But really make sure you take that extra time as you practice this thrust to push it out. Because you want that married to your leg, but not happening at the exact same time. I want to create that angle and follow it, then work off of it. Now next, Ochs to Ochs. This one's a little more frustrating, and also on these, on Flug and Ochs, you can also go back the other way. It's exactly the same idea, but it is very good practice. Your arms will just cross as you do it. But Ochs, on the other hand, same sort of idea. I'm up here, I look for my best timing, and I push it out and through. Now, this is a very, very useful thrust to use, and I wish more people would, including myself. I wish I had the opportunity to do it more. If you use this correctly, you can just absolutely destroy Wurmtag, right? If someone is just hovering out with their sword at the shoulder, and you can launch this thrust about to here, there's not much they can do against you. It really does lock them out. The trick with it is that you have to have the courage to get that turnover. So, this is a very good way to practice it. As I start my thrust, I'm looking to get pretty close to extension, and the more extended my arms are, the easier it is for me to turn them over without having to really alter my arms very much. Because if they're very here, I have to do a bigger motion, so my tip ends up doing more of a smile almost. The more extended I make my arms, the tighter I can make that turnover, which means that not only is my tip more on target, but the cone that I'll make to protect myself is going to be stronger and exactly where I want it to be. But here's that again, so you're a nice Ochs. You're going to push through, turn over. Missed that one, but that's okay. Make sure as well, self-critiquing myself here, I'm getting a little bit more curled on this side than I want. I want nice 45 when I finish. Because what I do want to get into the habit of doing is I'm currently locking out this side. I'll just thrust the coin, right? And I'm then locking out this side as well. Because you can go back after that. That's just winding and winding again. But either way, and I just showed Ochs to Ochs the other way. Those are kind of the basic ones that I really recommend you get pretty good at. Probably the only one that I'd add in besides that would be out of Alber. Just extending that tip out with a little advancement of the lead foot. It's never a bad thing to get into the habit of doing, just because it's a very long range thrust. It's a very surprising thrust, and you can work off of it. I'm just not necessarily nailing it today. That's okay though. Now, the next ones are the Meisterhau. And I'll describe how I like to do them individually, because they all have slightly different properties. So, all these are going to be the Meisterhau done as a thrust, since, you know, that's kind of the goal here. But that's not to say that there isn't a little bit of gaminess going on right now. We're trying to achieve a certain goal, and so that is influencing things, but that's not going to make these not work for you. Just bear that in mind. So, first on the list is the Zornhau. I pretty much already showed that, right? You can do it from at the shoulder or up here, doesn't really matter, but all I'm going to do is push out, So as I step through, I should be going through my target. In that case, I actually almost cut the ring. That's fun, right? But these ones in particular, you should be working on getting decent range since you're going to be passing at the same instant. I want to make sure that I am getting out to my good range and should be just about tip in. Then I recommend going ahead and either winding in or doing whatever sort of forward recovery you want to do. You can work a bunch of things in like that, but that's Zorn. For Zwerk, I put it up at the shoulder. What I'm going to do is I'm going to step out very laterally. Since this is Zwerk done as a thrust, I want to be lined up with my target, not necessarily in my target initially. So I'm going to step out, project, and as soon as I want to be a little closer than this, but as soon as I'm here, I'm just going to drive that tip in with a small thrust, then return. Here's that again. Up through, drive, back. Now, next one, and you can do these from both sides, of course, so I can, for example, Zwerk 1, Zwerk 2, and I should be at appropriate distance to still launch that point through, because with the Zwerk, especially, and the same is true of the Unter, I want to be moving wide around my target, not past my target. Not unless I'm trying to do a very particular thing, but that's not what we're looking for right now. Now, next on the list is going to be Krumpf. Krumpf can be done in two ways. You can either throw your Krumpf where you're hitting initially, so I'm going through and my tip is pretty much already lined up, and then as soon as it's in the ring, or mostly in the ring, I'm going to go ahead and turn up into Ox on my left side. That one's pretty tricky, and it's very good to get to be able to do, because it's good control of your tip from this unorthodox angle, right? But the other way you can do it is instead to imagine that you're crumping onto the blade or onto the hands and then turning over. So that would look like this. So I crump into a target ahead, and then I turn to push the tip in. That one's much trickier, but is very, very good to get in the habit of doing, because I find a lot of people, when they learn this combination, they get too into the cut, and the cut is very useful, don't get me wrong, but the problem is they miss out on that opportunity for a nice tight thrust, and especially if you're fighting people who are very twitchy, that thrust will snake its way in there and get around most of their defenses. So here's that one again. I crump in front of my target and just turn for a nice tight thrust. Now, next on the list is Shield. Shield is one that you kind of got to do right. This one is always a lot of fun. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out with my short edge as I pass forward on my right side, and really I'm just looking to travel that point through. Not quite. This one is one that we'll see if I get it, but it's one that I still struggle with. Really, the more you can get that tip out and focus less on the ring and much more on just getting through, there it is, to that target beyond the ring, is when you're going to get this to work for you. The more you try to treat aiming this one because of how it comes in, the more the tip is going to go off to the side. The more you focus on shearing in against that target, the better the chance you have. But all that fun stuff afterwards. And you can practice a lot of different withdrawals from here, just winding, doing all sorts of things. It's a lot of fun. But final one on the list for the Meisterhau at least is going to be the Scheitel. Now for the Scheitel, you can do it in two ways. You can either do it as how Yu Lu describes it, i.e. throwing the cut a little short to let the tip sort of thunk down, then delivering it through. And you can also play around with doing it where you let your arms relax so the tip gets that extra thunk. Or you can also just bring it down to about here, then project it. Either one is just fine. You do you, whatever interpretation you feel. The more tricky one to do is going to instead be trying to make it land in one go. And that requires a decent amount of practice. But either one is just fine. After you land, I do recommend going up through, which I'll show real quick, regardless of whether or not I hit. So, wait for it. Out, through. Oh well. After you get through, go ahead and get in the habit of winding over, because you'll be sitting on top of their cross guard. Doing that quick turnover to either side allows you to get that plunge. But that's all the Meisterhau, as well as some basic thrusts. What are some other fun German-style ones you can throw in if you're bored? Personally, the two that I like to also throw in are going to be Stützau and the thrust from Schlüssel. So for Stützau, and again, we'll see if I can get it, it's really the opposite of Shield. I'm going to approach into target, I'm going to push and turn my hands over and my tip should go through the ring as I put that right foot forward. So here's that again. Let's see if I can get it. For it. A little high. The trick with this one is really, again, not necessarily focusing on the ring, and instead focusing on the target beyond. This strike is very good at getting over guards, especially good at getting over bucklers, and that's where you'll see it a lot more. So what I really want to focus on as I apply this is just that dive, which I'm not getting today, but that's okay. You guys have understood the basic body mechanic. Now the next one I like to do, and that is a challenging one, the next one I like to do, this is the longest range one, which is key. So I take Schlussel, in which case, sword's resting on my arm, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on pushing my way through. So the way I launch this thrust is I push it out as my arms turn, and then I follow behind it with my right step. And really the trick about this is making that transition from the initial uncurling into my passing step as smooth as possible. As right there what happened is there was a little bit of delay between the two, so my body readjusted, so my tip went out of accuracy. This is all about just driving it forward in one smooth motion. And you can drive yourself nuts doing these thrusts. Just like with the ones I described in the Fiore video, do a couple, pick the ones you want to do for that day based on what you're working on, get them done, and be happy with it. Almost. But, point being, after you get your point in, recover to one of the 4 openings, and you'll be pretty safe and secure. There are, of course, some other general things you could do. You could try and get schnappen in with a plunge or things along those lines, but these are the ones that I find are the most beneficial. They're really quite wonderful. You can also practice doing little Dutchwechselns out at distance, then following through, or what have you, but these are all great. So, for those of you who wanted some advice for the KDF, there's some thrusts for you to practice. Get better at them than me, because we're always still training. But otherwise, hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you very much for watching. We'll go over some other techniques another time.